Hello fellow readers and readeresses, and a very happy new year to all. May your dreams come true in 2025, and may that be enough. Now, the year might be new, but I am the same old me, so we're starting the month with a good old reading wrap-up. December was filled with lots of beauty, but it was also strangely tense and kind of sad for me, so I didn't read as much as I thought I would, but whatever I read, I mostly enjoyed. As always, let's begin by looking at the TBR I was working with. The first book was Promise of Blood, which was for a prompt card where the prompt was read a paperback with a map. The second book was Cibola Burn for another prompt to read a book by an author duo. Then we had The Mystery of the Blue Train for another prompt card to read a book with a color in the title. Then we had Wind and Truth, which was a free choice for completing the map. And lastly, we had Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which was a buzzword reading challenge book where the prompt for December was holiday words. So only 5 books, no biggie, but in addition to those, I had quite a few left over from previous months. Kitchen Confidential, which was a leftover from October, and The Fires of Heaven, An Echo of Things to Come, and Only Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast, which were leftovers from November. So 9 books in total, technically not an impossible task, but sadly still unachieved. This time there were no books that weren't even started, but there are some that remain unfinished even as we speak. I'm filming this on the 4th of January. An Echo of Things to Come by James Islington. I didn't even open this book throughout the entirety of December. Whatever I read in November is all I read of it. Frankly, I only just remembered that it was on my TBR when I was reviewing it for this video. And surprisingly, Wind and Truth is still unfinished, my most anticipated release for 2024, which I started reading the day it came out. And the problem with it is kind of twofold. For one, I don't really want to finish this book because I know that at the end of it, somebody whom I love very dearly, even though they're fictional, is about to die. At least one someone, and probably more than just one. And for another, so far, I'm about 40% into it, the book is kind of disappointing. Not to be too hasty with my opinion, but I have the feeling that the story is becoming more preachy and less epic with every single book ever since Oathbringer. I see a lot of finger wagging and generic grandstanding and not enough actual meaning. I do hope it improves, and Sanderson tends to write better towards the end of his books, but so far kind of underwhelming. I will update you on my final thoughts in my January wrap-up. Now that out of the way, let's talk about the books that I finished in December in the order in which I finished them. Starting with Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. This is the memoir that made a celebrity out of the chef all the way back in the early 2000s. I've been meaning to read it for so many years, and now I kinda wish I'd read it the first time I heard about the man. But maybe had I done that, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much because I was a very different person back then. Well, actually, I was the same, just much worse. As the French say, rien ne sert de courir. Il faut partir à point. I'm kind of in a French mood today, I don't know if you can tell. This was a fantastic book, one of the best, most vivid and engaging non-fictions I've ever read. It even made my best books of 2024 list, and it was up against some steep competition. And granted, I am kind of biased, but that is true at any given point about anything really. I dare say the author is as good with the pen as he is with the pan. I'm sorry, please don't leave. Anyway, the book is very engaging and it's written with an equal measure of candor and style, which is a rare thing to find, especially when it comes to nonfiction. I like the book, I gave it 5 stars, and I highly recommend. Next I finished The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. This is an adult epic fantasy and the 5th book in the Wheel of Time series. I won't say much here being that the book is so far into the series, but I had the same issues with it I've been having with the previous books. Too overwritten, too much focus on irrelevant nonsense instead of the plot, which, in combination with the world building, is by far the best thing about this series. Frustrating and embarrassing drama alongside annoying characters were as always the bane of my existence. Though I am very much liking where Matt's storyline is going, and Matt is no longer a character that annoys me. I count that as a win. I also very much enjoyed all the Aes Sedai scheming, especially the dynamic between Swan Sanjay and Lyanna. I thought that was done really well. There are also a few mysteries I would very much like to know more about. In general, not a bad read, though I think it would have benefited greatly by a bit of trimming. swimming. I gave it 3.6 stars and I will continue with the series, but I am taking a bit of a break before that. Next I finished Cibola by James S.A. Corey. This is an adult space opera sci-fi and the fourth book in the Expanse series. I didn't own a physical copy of this one, so I got the ebook instead. I honestly don't know what to think about this one. In general, I liked it, but I can't help but feel that it squandered some of its potential. It had some good parts, mainly the interludes and the setup for the Miller mystery. Those were exquisite, both baffling in a good way and strangely emotional. There was this intoxicating mix of loneliness, mystery, and purpose on a scale the mere human mind couldn't hope to fathom. Truly, those were what kept me reading obsessively for days. However, the rest was mostly underwhelming and slightly disjointed. I felt like the book didn't really know where it was going with this particular episode. We had many setups that didn't pay off well and things were happening, but they weren't really all that meaningful. One of the plot lines was literally how one lady needed to get laid in order to calm down and focus, and it was done in a kind of a lame way. I still liked where the book ended, even though it wasn't nearly as devastating as it should have been given the circumstances, and I'm beyond curious to see the political outcome as well as find out more about the overarching mystery. Overarching? I never know how to say this. I gave this installment 3.5 to 4 stars, and I'm planning on continuing with the series as soon as I can. Next I finished Promise of Blood by McClellan. This is an adult epic fantasy and the first book in the Powder Mage series. This was actually a reread for me. The first time I read it was all the way back in April of 2023, and being that it was so long ago, I had forgotten a big chunk of it. And I'm really happy I decided to reread it, because had I continued with the series directly, which I'm planning on doing shortly, I would have been rather confused. I absolutely love this book, probably even more than I did the first time. I mean, I read it within 2 days only, and that speaks for itself. I've compared this book previously to a combination between Mistborn by Sanderson and The First Law by Abercrombie, and after rereading it, I stand 100% behind these words. The characters were well developed, and amongst them I liked best Hamas, but I enjoyed following the most Adamat because he was doing an investigation and because of the discoveries that he was making. The book was well written, even if the writing style wasn't anything too spectacular. It had a lot of impactful moments, though my favorite one was actually a rather funny one. It featured the doctor and a few of our main characters, and a guy that is rendered unconscious due to some circumstances, and the comments that the doctor made were cracking me up. I was actually laughing out loud, and that's pretty impressive given how gruesome the rest of the book actually is. All in all, a great read. I gave it 5 stars. Then I finally finished Only Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast by Oscar Wilde. This is a collection of his most wittiest thoughts and quotes, and I for one enjoyed it quite a lot. Not much to say here really. It was like reading someone's tweets. It was short and entertaining. One can live for years without living at all, and then all life comes crowding into one single hour. I hate vulgar realism in literature. The man who could call a spade should be compelled to use one. There is this to be said in favor of the despot, that he, being an individual, may have culture, while the mob, being a monster, has none. Fashion is merely a form of ugliness so unbearable that we are compelled to alter it every 6 months. The maxim, if you find the company dull, blame yourself, seems to us somewhat optimistic. In all important matters, style, not sincerity, is the essential. Experience was of no ethical value. It was merely the name men give to their mistakes. And many, many, many more. I would highly recommend you read this. It's not going to take you too long, and you're going to have some good time. The next book I finished in December was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. This is the 7th and final book in the most popular YA series of all time, and it was probably like a 10th reread for me or something of that sort. I like this book the most of the entire series, even though I love all of them, and each time I pick it up, I remember why it is so special. I can't say a single bad thing about this book. Even though I'm fully aware of its flaws, it's already solidified itself as one of my favorites, and that just can't be helped. I don't really think I need to say much more here. For one thing, it's the last book in a series, and for another, you're probably already sick of hearing about it. I loved it, I gave it 5 stars, and I can't wait to reread it again. And the last book I finished in December, and in 2024 in general, was The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie. This is a classic murder mystery and the 7th book in the Hercule Poirot series. To my understanding, the author hated this book because it was written in one of the worst periods of her life, and only because she was in need of money, and to be honest, it kind of shows. Now, don't get me wrong, the book is still good, it's written by a genius of a woman, and her worst is better than others' best, but in comparison to her other works that I've read, it falls a bit short. For one, the character cast is too bloated, making the story feel a little bit disjointed. There are too many short scenes with rapid switches in environment and tone, making it very difficult for one to fully submerge oneself into the atmosphere. Some of the characters were written more like caricatures, particularly Mireille, who was a Parisian dancer and who was the quintessential mustache-twirling villain, minus the mustache. Additionally, the red herring was a bit too obvious, while the clues were not laid out well enough. Frankly, the whole premise of the latter part of the book hinged on hunches and superstitious premonitions more than it did on actual evidence. Until one point, that is, when things start to actually fall into place. Still, not too bad. I like the general setup and some of the characters, particularly the victim. I think the author did a great job with her and with her presentation. Also, there are some Easter eggs here. For example, the book mentions a fictional village, which is the main location for another of Agatha Christie series that I loved, Miss Marple. Also, there is a conductor here that I think is the same one that we see in the Orient Express, which is from a book by Agatha Christie that I read only last month, so it's still fresh in my mind, and I'm sure there are other things that I've missed. So again, overall, not too bad. I gave it 3.2 stars. And so, to summarize, in the month of December, I read 7 books, which amounted to a total of 3,352 pages. In terms of genre, we have 1 memoir, 2 classics, 3 fantasies, and 1 sci-fi. In terms of formatting, I read 5 paperbacks and 2 ebooks, and in terms of sourcing, I owned 6 of the books and borrowed 1. So that's it for December. Not a bad month, at least not in terms of reading. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I realize that wrap-ups in this format aren't to everyone's taste, but frankly, I enjoy filming them, so I shall continue. Let me know how your December went. I always enjoy reading your stories, even if it's not related to books. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to see my favorite books of 2024, check out this video. Bye!